briefing from the UTA about their tentative 2024 annual budget, which includes $424.5 million in operating expenses and $230.4 million in capital investment to fund the provision of safe, convenient, and reliable service and key investments in infrastructure. The council also joined Mayor Aaron Mendenhall in declaring December 1st as World AIDS Day in Salt Lake City. Voted to approve the North Point Small Area Plan.
We're back. Welcome to today's City Council meeting. Our meetings are public and you are welcome to join us in person or by watching from the Council's agenda page, Zoom, Facebook, YouTube, or SLC TV. We hope you'll continue to join us in whatever manner you feel most comfortable. This is a work session meeting during which there's no public comment. Please join us on February 20th, 2024 during our 7 p.m. formal meeting to share your comments. We, of course, welcome your feedback anytime by mail to P.O. Box 145-476, Salt Lake City, Utah, 84114-5476, by email at council.comments@slc.gov, or via our 24-hour phone comment line, 801-535-7654. Comments we receive on agenda topics are shared with council members and posted to our website, slccouncil.com. We'll now begin our work session. The first item on the agenda is informational updates from the administration. Andrew Johnson, come on up. Johnston, sorry, I dropped a T. I'm a true Utah, I dropped the T.
Thanks, council members. Yeah, I'm it today, so I apologize in advance for any letdown you have about this. Next slide, please. I did a little different this week. I did not have the quick updates for you all, but you kind of get a sense of what we're talking about, generally speaking. Last week, we had a lot of disruption in the encampment impact mitigation work and the rapid intervention work due to weather and those kind of factors. So this week, I would anticipate Folsom Trail and 10th West along the river would be a focal point for those two things. We did have a resource fair last week at the rescue mission, very successful again. And no code blues were called. We anticipated there might have been one, but there was not. Looks like it could be mild weather for a bit, but I still recommend folks going to the website and signing up if they're willing to volunteer in case of that. On the screen now, what you'll see is a recap of something we talked about last week with some additional information. We wanted to put in the Public Safety and Emergency Services recommendations from the governor's budget to the legislature, which they're going to be taking up in the next 2 weeks. Those pieces there we've talked about. These are things about low barrier shelter development, new shelter, operations, non-congregate shelter, which is micro shelter, winter response and stabilization, ongoing system funding, and then shelter mitigation funds. Those are all asks currently of the legislature. Below are things that could be impacted by the funding or not funding of those things. So in Salt Lake County, we're running at 99% capacity across our beds, generally speaking. The winter beds, we have 460, the MVP is 165, and then 200 code blue beds on those nights, which means 825 beds. All of these beds will not continue without funding. So minimum, we're looking at 625 beds that could be eliminated in this summertime and going forward without additional funding. Now, we hope for some funding, we hope for all the funding, but I want to be very clear with folks when they're asking, what can we do? We can do this. We can fund shelter beds. This is an immediate step that can be taken to make these beds year-round and maintain a lot of the gains that people are able to get inside this wintertime. The businesses are not being as impacted negatively. There's a lot of good happening with this investment here. The thing at the bottom, the HRC police units, that is also the mitigation funds. The $2.5 million is ongoing. We need those funds to continue with that work in our city. So I want to make sure that was helpful for you all, but also for the general public, because the asks of the governor's budget are directly related to what we're seeing right now. Any questions on that?
Andrew, can I step into potential political minefield here? The request was around 180 to 190 million for all of these combined. Currently coming out of social services, ranked as priority number 50, there is $7 million allocated to this request. Is that correct about the current status? The mitigation funds I know were different, but.
Yeah, I mean, these are all a little different. So I think the important piece was getting through that into executive appropriations, and that's where the real sort of discussion will go. And then some of them are ongoing, some of them are one time. So a lot of that is still being worked out, I believe.
Madam Chair, just can I pop in and say that anytime council members find themselves in conversations with legislators at any level, it would probably be helpful to emphasize the importance of this funding to the real beds in the city, because it's not just the city's funding for mitigation and police, it's the funding for the programs as a whole.
Just wanted to make sure we put on the record how dire the current potential circumstances are and how engaged we as council people and any concerned constituents who happen to be ours and of the state, just to make sure that there's information flowing.
Hi. Chair?
Yes, sir.
I think to this point, I mean, we are obviously trying our hardest, I think, to make sure that this, I mean, certainly you are and your team and the city as a whole, but we need the help of the community and in general. And I know that this is not a formal meeting and let fewer people, listen to this, but we really need everybody to help us, tell the legislators that we need this funding. This is the only way we're going to tackle this crisis in our streets.
Oh, Chair.
Yes.
So I do have one follow-up question. So noting that the current items haven't been prioritized, but that they have prioritized efforts related to starter homes, is there a jump from these individuals being able to afford starter homes? Because I think that's the messaging that I've received is like, don't worry, we have starter homes potentially in the queue. So I would love to hear kind of your feedback on that related to these requests.
Sure. I believe the next slide might help a little bit with that. But when we think about, there we go, the housing piece, folks who are experiencing unsheltered or sheltered homelessness in shelters, they do need housing. And they're probably going to start out with housing that's deeply, deeply affordable, below, say, 30% median income. Now, a starter home might be that. But generally speaking, we're talking about apartments probably, right? But what happens in our current housing market is all the way up the income levels, everybody gets priced out down a level, down a level, down a level, so the pressure gets deeper and deeper in. So even if you make enough for maybe a starter home or above that, but you can't find anything, you're gonna go down one. So you can see how this hurts. So we need all of it for the housing discussion. It's not either or necessarily, but what we're talking about right now is the immediate need for shelter this year to help everybody when they get into shelter. That's much easier to do the treatment, the support, the stabilization, everything that gets them ready for housing and then that spectrum.
Thank you. I appreciate you clarifying that, and wherever we can amplify that message, I think would be valuable.
Thank you.
Sure. This slide in front of you is a second piece about the housing requests. You can see the 25 of $5 and $10 million. 40,000 Utah renters are extremely low income renters, meaning below 30% EMI. That's from the Gardner Institute. That's across the state. I think we have about 17,000 in our county right now. We cannot solve homelessness without housing and services. And so in addition to the shelter and the operations and the behavioral health needs that are being asked, this housing is really the long-term play. We need to invest in housing consistently over years to get caught up on this. And you can see at the very bottom there, from the general fund of the state, and the Olin Walker Housing Loan Fund has received about $2.24 million every year since 2019 for the entire state. Now, they've done one-time appropriations of federal monies and other monies the last couple of years, but this is the base funding. And if there was just this base funding going forward, we're not going to make up any ground on this issue. So that's why these asks are so important. Even if they're one time, we have to keep doing one time until we can get ongoing funding for this. If we can't invest in housing for the long term, we're not going to make up ground. We're going to have to keep building more shelter, which I don't think anybody really wants to do. So you can see why we need the immediate shelter stuff and the operations, and do a long-term investment in housing year over year.
Thank you, Andrew. Any questions?
Thank you all very much.
All right, thank you. We'll see you on the Hill. All right, we will move on to our second piece of business, which is a rezone and master plan amendment at 803, 805, 807, and 815 West Simondi Avenue, and 802, 806, 810, and 814 West 300 North. Brian Fulmer is here as Cassie Younger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a proposal from NeighborWorks Salt Lake to amend the zoning map for the properties you mentioned in Council District 2 from their current R1 7000, which is single-family residential, to RMF 30, or low-density multifamily residential. In addition, the proposal would amend the Northwest Community Master Plan future land use map, land use designations from low-density residential to medium-density residential. The petitioner's stated objective is to develop low-density, affordable, for-sale townhomes on the subject parcels, though no development proposal has been submitted. I'll turn it over to Cassie.
Thank you, Brian. All right, my name is Cassie Younger, here to present the rezone and master plan amendment at Simondi and 300 North. You can go to the next slide. As you can see from the vicinity map, this petition consists of 8 parcels, so 4 along Simondi Ave and 4 on 300 North. So this total is about 0.93 acres or 40,000 square feet. The current zoning is R1 7000, which is single family residential, and the applicant NeighborWorks, as Brian stated, a local nonprofit, intends to build affordable housing on these properties, and they are petitioning to rezone it to RMF 30, which is a low-density multifamily residential zone, just in order to have the flexible housing types that the RMF 30 zone offers. Next slide. All of the properties, all 8 of them, are currently vacant. There was a recent demolition of a 4-plex, so all buildings on all 8 properties no longer remain. There is an alley that goes down the block, down the center of the properties, and the applicant has not applied to vacate this alley, so even after development, it will remain open to the public and the other residents on the block. Next slide. They're also petitioning to amend the master plan, which is the Northwest Community Master Plan. So this plan was adopted in 1992, so a lot of the goals and statements in this plan are pretty outdated for the area. It designates this area as low-density residential in the future land use map, and the applicant is proposing to amend this to be updated to medium-density residential. Next slide. So the main difference between these 2 zones are the housing typologies. And so in the R1 7000, you can only do single family and detached, whereas in the RMF 30, you can do single family detached, single family attached, twin homes, multifamily, and this zone also includes cottage style development and tiny homes. Next slide. And so when we compare the development standards for these 2 zones, a lot of the setbacks are very similar. There is allowed additional height in the RMF 30 zone, which equates to additional story. So you can have 3 stories for these housing types instead of 2. And then the minimum lot size is 2,000 square feet per dwelling unit for the RMF 30. And it's not in this table, but for cottage style and tiny homes, it's 1,500 square feet. So because all of these properties combined are about 40,000 square feet, we're looking at maybe a maximum of 20 units for all 8 properties, or 26 units if they were tiny homes or cottage style development. Next slide. And so the Planning Commission forwarded a positive recommendation for both the zoning map and the master plan amendment on September 13th. And then there were a few concerns from the public heard at that meeting about the lack of development plans from the applicant. Development plans are not required for this type of petition. And I do believe that the applicant is here to speak to some of the potential that they're thinking of on the property.
Thank you. Council members, any questions for staff? Yes, Councilmember Dugan.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. On these 2 sections, since they're 2 different sections, but they're basically the same here, And our affordable housing initiative, was this presented to the planning before we adopted our AHI? And so if you were to adopt our initiative and just use the R17,000 and you allowed that for sale, could you still get a number of houses on a row house of, say, across the board on all 4 lots that would allow them to be affordable and market rate? The same number of houses or similar number of houses in this area?
I don't believe it would be the same density.
Or similar density, and using the alleyway as a place to park your cars? I'm just curious because we're rezoning this thing, but we also have this affordable housing initiative that we're trying to increase home ownership and also affordability, and that could do something similar to the same rezone.
You'd be able to get more with RMF 30 because in the affordable housing incentives, there's no density limitation if you meet the affordable housing criteria for the RMF 30 zone. But the single family zones, you're going to be limited to, I think it's like 3 or 4 dwelling units per lot. So more than likely you're going to get more with RMF 30.
Yeah, I know you have 4, but I was thinking these are also deep lots, so you'd have to almost like match them up abut each other because you couldn't go. I guess you could go deep on some of them, but one of them looks like it's too narrow to go actually deep on it, and you could just combine them there as a row of 8 homes or 10 homes or on that lot. And I'm just looking at it as we're rezoning this thing when we could just do something very similar to that without rezoning it, but we also could get affordable housing with an incentive because these were also, I think they talked about doing it for sale. Is that was that part of their desire?
Yes, and NeighborWorks, and specifically the applicant, the person representing the applicant, has literally conditioned all of us who come from the West Side into what good practice for affordable home ownership looks like, and has been a guardian for it. So while typically I would be endorsing this, in this case, number one, you'll notice we have the oldest master plan in the city. I like the rezone because it calls the attention to the fact that we have no accurate vision for what should be happening in the Northwest Quadrant currently alive. And number two, R17,000 is nonsensical that close to transit and amenities. And number three, this is intended to be something, if I'm not mistaken, according to akin to workforce housing, which is a demographic we're desperately missing in this area. We already have some of the last naturally occurring affordable housing in the city. And so, which is why I've often protested the closure of Mary W. Jackson, because it was a central staple to people who need it the most. But what we don't have there is teachers, firefighters, people who need a home who are currently priced out. So ordinarily, Councilmember Dugan, I would be with you in championing let's get the pilot for the affordable housing incentive, but I think the constellation of pressures and stressors on this project, combined with the fact that the applicant is a known purveyor of good things that forward the things that we were aiming for in the affordable housing, I don't feel the urgency to push for it here in this case.
And is there any affordable housing on here? Because this is all just...
The whole thing.
Okay, maybe I missed that part. Okay, I didn't realize it was 80% AMI on the...
Well, we can ask the applicant all those to clarify those
okay.
questions, but this is designed to be housing that is attainable.
Madam Chair, before we ask the applicant to come up, I would, the only question I have, I think this is great. I agree with your statement, although I would have stopped at R17,000 is nonsensical, period. But that's just me. My question for the applicant is what their plans are with the alleyway, and I hope the answer is to keep the alleyway continuous and to activate it and use it. And my question would be what? That's my question for the applicant on this. Sorry.
Yeah,
you gave
right
me the
now
question in my ear, and I just
right now it's just crumbling asphalt. So we'll, anything will be an improvement. Anything else for staff? All right. Would anyone from NeighborWorks care to come up? Would you please give us your name for the record? could you make sure the light is on?
Oh, okay. My name is David Foster, and I'm the Real Estate Development Manager for NeighborWorks Salt Lake.
All right. Do you have a presentation, or are you just here to answer questions?
No, we do.
Okay.
So, can we go to the next slide? Next slide.
Yeah, say it in Max box.
Oh, can we go to the next slide? So what I did is I just put a presentation together of what was there before and some examples of what was previously there before. And so there was a fourplex on this property, and it was something that wasn't savable and was pretty ran down. And so we just recently demoed that and brought that structure down. Next slide. These were also on their property. There was a former gas station, a garage, and then there was a bunch of little garages there that they stored automobiles in. And at one point there was a gas station there, and like there was underground gas tanks as well. But as you can see from these photos, these have been boarded up. The roof was literally like being held up by beams and stuff to keep from collapsing. And so the same thing, we elected to bring those down. Next slide. These were some of the homes that were there. These homes were built, one of them was built like in 1901, 1908, 1903, and the same thing. We did to look at these and evaluate them to see if it was something that we could to save, because they were cute little homes, but they didn't have good foundations under, and they were really small, and they had been boarded up for years, and the homeless had been living in them and stuff like that. So same thing, we elected to clean up the property and bring those down. Next slide, please. And then this is what it looks like now. We've removed everything and cleaned it all up. We brought in some additional fill dirt and leveled it all out, so it's safe until we can, we can figure out what's the next plan for this, which we're hoping is the rezoning. So we kind of leveled it out and got it all prepared for what's next. Next slide. As an example of some of the past NeighborWorks townhomes that we've done, I thought this slide was important to show what could be there now. So these are just some former developments that NeighborWorks has done, and they've been done recently as well too. So next slide. And I put this in there. I thought it was important because, like, as we're rezoning this and stuff like that, very adjacent to our property, there's other similar town hall style developments. There's multifamily housing literally across the street, and so to me it only makes sense that if there's other stuff in our neighborhood that I just didn't see there'd be a reason why it wouldn't be looked upon, that we could do the same thing here. As you can see when I showed you those pictures, a lot of that structure was built from the early 1900s and was severely ran down. It was boarded up. And that's one of the things that NeighborWorks likes to do, is take problem properties and clean them up and develop, make some nice homes there and stuff like that. So our idea is to, bring some affordable housing in there by doing townhomes. We can, where they're joined together and doing row houses, we can make them more affordable. And we all know that the city needs affordable housing. And so that's our big plan for this, is just trying to clean up the area and bring some affordable housing that's greatly needed in the city. Next slide. Now, because I'm sure you guys all know this, because architectural costs are so great, I've got another development I'm working on that just getting the plans made and stuff like that, we're upwards of $200,000 for all those architectural plans. And so, although we don't have actual plans for this, we didn't want to go into that until we knew that this could be rezoned for the cost. And so these are some ideas that we've been talking with some architects, and they looked at some of the stuff in the neighborhood, and they thought, some of these might be fitting for that, but we don't have a solid plan put together. But we will put something together that works for the neighborhood, and that something looks nice and enhances the neighborhood and makes it a better neighborhood. Next slide. And that was the end of it. So, and I would like to add something to this whole thing. We are trying to bring these units. It's my goal to try to get the units that we build there under $400,000. We've been currently working with trying to put a meeting together with the RDA to negotiate a deal to bring community land trust to this area as a way of creating affordable housing. So that's all I have. Any questions for
Thank
me?
you. Council.
Yeah, that's great. I appreciate the last comment there, because that was my next question, is if there's going to be affordable housing, is NeighborWorks going to continue to own the land, lease the property so that the deed restriction on the affordable housing still stays affordable at 8% for 20 plus years, or how is that going to work? And that's really not part of the rezone. I mean, we're here to discuss rezone, but that would be kind of like the development agreement is here. How do we keep that affordable after the first homeowner leaves?
Yeah, I'm not sure, we've put all the community land trust together. We haven't actually done a project yet. We have all the paperwork in place, and so we have the infrastructure ready to go like that. And I'm not sure how much you guys know about community land trust. And so basically how land trust works is,
Let's try.
okay, this is where Maria comes in.
La Reina's here.
Council members, hello. Councilman Dugan, so it would be 99 years, and in perpetuity, we would renew the land for another 99 years. So it's a shared equity program. So it's a good first step for first-time home buyers. So we're hoping that they build equity, and maybe by then, housing will be affordable, and they can get on the R1 7000.
Councilmember Pui.
I mean, I think I would like to petition this council for 8th West to be renamed NeighborWorks because I mean, your organization has at least 5 houses in that street that I know of, probably more. And and I'm very excited about the project. Unfortunately, these properties were run down and it was underutilized land. And I appreciate the focus on looking for affordability in our neighborhood. And this is my neighborhood right there. I literally, walk my dog around this every day. Oh no, every day. She wishes every day, but no, I appreciate this. My general question is past the rezone. I have no concerns with the rezone, but it's more about where the properties are going to be looking at. I want to make sure that 300 West and 800 they're not giving the back to those streets. It's I don't know how to make that happen, but I just want to make sure that there is some sort of thought that some of the development that we have seen in the area, older one, apartment complexes, just don't look at the sidewalk. They're just giving the back to it, and I think that is a missed opportunity.
Yeah, agreed. Thank you, Councilman Pui. We try to maintain the integrity of the neighborhood, so we love front porches. We love the parking in back. We will maintain the alley. That's important, access for existing residents, but also that needs to be part of access to parking.
Councilmember
I guess
Mono?
I'll say that that's an excellent point, Councilmember Pui, that this could be done in ways that are really good for the neighborhood, and that would include activating the street front and having front porches and things like that. The good news is that RMF 30 actually requires that. So the zone that you're requesting actually has within it requirements to do the things that you're asking for. So I think the request aligns with what I'm hearing council members talk about.
And can I just ask
Councilman
Councilmember Mono a question? So yeah, if it was R1 7000, that wouldn't be required. It'd either be the front porch on 300 North or the front porch on 800 West, and you could actually have just the side of the wall on that property then on 800.
That's true. Yeah, R1 7000 has no orientation requirements.
Right. So, but the RMF 30 would require that they have on both those streets, possibly.
Entrance elements or something like that are listed in the ordinance.
So I'm appreciative, and I think I love the discussion about the rezone. My whole thing is more on the development agreement, that they're for sale, it's affordable, and we have that. We just talked about the 99-year lease, that portion of it, which is separate, and that's more of a development agreement separate from the rezone. And so those need to come together for us, but we're just here for the rezone.
And family-size units? We're anticipating family-sized units?
Say that again?
We're anticipating family-sized units.
Yes.
Council members, any other questions? All right, we took it easy on you.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Bring it on.
Thank you all for being here.
Well, I just want to comment that, Councilman Pui, just appreciate the city's support. All the affordable housing that we've been able to do throughout Salt Lake City is because of the partnership that we have with Salt Lake City. And so we're looking forward to working with the redevelopment agency to create that community land trust, because that's so critical in terms of the value of the land and building out the unit. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, so let's move on to the zoning terms and definitions amendment. We might have to break in the middle of this in order to do our legislative briefing, which will be short, so we'll come back to it. Council people, if you need your emotional support, council staff, Brian Fulmer is here, but he's informed me he has no formal introduction. So we're gonna let Nick, but we, no, they are so much more skillful than that. But we have Nick Norris and Ben Buckley here to dive right into the deep end with us. If I interrupt you, please don't take it personally. We just, during legislative session, make sure they get their time when they're here. So.
Sure, not an
All right.
issue. Good afternoon. Even closer. All right. My name is Ben. Thanks for having me. I am going to be briefing you on the zoning terms and definitions text amendment. Next slide, please. So this was initiated back in 2023. This amendment is essentially cleaning up 21A. It provides some consistency and clarity throughout the ordinance. Planning Commission forwarded a positive recommendation in August 2023, and this amendment includes completely removing 21A.60. That's just a list of terms at this point that nobody uses. It's over 760 terms long. If you're looking for the term that you're trying to learn what it's defined as, you're looking in the definitions, you're not looking there. It also includes amendments to 21A 62040. That is the actual definitions. No standards or impacts will be felt from the way we are amending the definitions. We're amending them to just provide consistency and clarity. And then there are amendments related to other provisions throughout 21A. It's important to note that there are no land use standards or land use provisions or regulations or zoning standards that are going to be changed with this amendment. Next slide, please. Again, 21A 60 being deleted completely, 760 terms, not useful. In 21A 62040, there are a lot of definitions that are defined as see definition of, and it just points you to more definitions. So we are getting rid of that as well in 21A 62040. And then there are also a lot of not a lot, but there's a handful of definitions that are not used in the code completely. Hospice is not used. What else? Record of survey map is not used. So we're really just trying to make this ordinance shorter and easier to follow and understand. And then what we are amending, definitions like setback, we're going to add the word yard to that, and then buffer. We're going to add landscape buffer or landscape in front of the word buffer, so you know it is a landscape buffer. In the definitions where we define building heights, we have a list of zones that those definitions apply to. Those zones that are listed there conflict with the actual zoning standards found for that district. So we are just removing those list of zones from that definition. again, these modifications do not impact the way that anything will be regulated or anything like that. And we can go to the next slide, please. That's my presentation. I am more than happy to answer any questions you got.
Thank you. Councilmember Young.
So it sounds like we're making technical changes to allow us to have less redundancy, more clarity. Is that accurate?
Exactly.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any other council person? You got a unanimous thumbs up, and you helped us make up time since we started a little bit late. So
There you go.
just no more gratitude we could show to you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, y'all.
All right. Angela, I see that you're here. Should we wait for Kate? Okay, let's go. Let's take 10 minutes.
How are you this evening? I will also try to give you some time back on your agenda. Angela Price, Legislative Affairs Director for the city. We have 12 working days of the session left. That's probably something that we all can celebrate right now. We are currently tracking 253 bills, and we're working over 50 bills right now, at least. That's probably not including what's in my inbox right now on the subs that have dropped. So we're very busy. It's a little bit of a calm before the storm. We know we have a lot of really big bills that have yet to come out, and a lot of big policies that are being worked on. So I encourage us all to breathe when we can, knowing that there's a lot of work to be done over the next 2 weeks. I want to just touch on a few things for you this evening. The first is ranked choice voting. Councilmember Dugan did a great job this morning testifying in opposition to this bill in committee. This bill did pass out of committee this morning. It just barely eked by, but it did get out of committee. And we were in opposition to this bill because it would roll back the pilot program for ranked choice voting. So currently that program is allowed to go through January 1st of 2026. This would roll back that program to May of 2024. There was a lot of testimony on this bill, from both sides really, but the individuals speaking in opposition wanted more time to analyze the data, to be able to really see what ranked choice voting does and how it's implemented, if there's revenue that's able to be saved. Of course, when you switch to a new voting mechanism, it costs a lot to educate voters on that. So we'll see where this goes in the House and in the Senate, but great job this morning, Councilmember Dugan. I understand you guys just got a really great briefing on homelessness, so I won't go too much into this, but just share that the Executive Appropriations Committee has started meeting this week. They're meeting each night. We should have budget numbers as early as Friday. They may hold those until next week. Our homeless and housing appropriations, as Andrew Johnston explained, are very, very much on the chopping block. So we are watching that very closely. We're spreading that message widely and working with our partners and with leadership to ensure that they understand the importance of the homelessness funding. Just real quickly, HB 42, Representative Ellison's homelessness amendments passed out of committee last Friday. We do have some concerns on this bill. We're still working with the sponsor through the Utah League of Cities and Towns on. And then HB 298 has passed the House and is waiting to be read in the Senate. This is Representative Clancy's bill. And we understand that the homelessness appropriations will potentially be tied to this bill at some point. So that's probably why it's still sitting in Senate rules waiting to be read.
And we were neutral on that one, right?
We were in support of that one.
298, okay.
Yep. And that bill is the bill that gives the Salt Lake mayor a permanent seat on the Homeless Council. Yep. And then two big land use bills were heard this morning in committee. HB 476, the municipal land use regulations. This is Representative White's bill. He presented the bill. There was a lot of questions about it, and then they ran out of time. because of how long ranked choice voting took this morning. And so we'll be hearing that bill again tomorrow in committee. And then HB 465, housing affordability revisions, passed out favorably this morning. These are the big consensus land use bills, so we are still watching those closely. There's a lot of technical work happening behind the scenes. And then there are numerous housing proposals still being worked on that we may see drop into some of these bills as we progress here over the next few weeks. Two other things to update you on. I saw that the council issued a statement on the State Board of Education. We are watching closely. We are hearing rumblings that the legislature may take some sort of action on this. So I'm sure maybe in your day job you have more intel on that, but we are watching this closely to see what we're hearing about that and what that action might be. And then the last one I'll mention is there are a lot of social bills right now that will impact how we operate as a city and how we are able to care for our employees, both from religious freedoms and the utilization of gender-specific language. So just know that we're watching those closely, working on amendments and building coalitions and partnerships on those bills. So happy to answer any questions that you guys may have for me.
Thank you, Angela. Council. Yes, Councilmember Dugan.
Education-wise, when do we, the committee meetings and our statements in committee meetings, when do those start to drop off? Because there's going to be a point where there are no longer any committee meetings.
Yeah, so that's the end of week 6.
End of week 6?
Mm-hmm. I think they may go 2 days into week 7, but I think week 7 is mostly floor time.
Just floor time. So really at that point, or even a few days before that, it's more like we need to just alert as far as just telling people as on the vote side of the House by just making any committee comments.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Council, just a reminder, you have access to Angela and to some of our lobbying team Friday afternoons at 3?
That's correct, yep.
Both virtually and in person, or just virtually?
We've just been doing them virtually. Yep.
So if you have any additional questions, concerns, bills, Angela, I repent that I ever thought we shouldn't fully fund the Legislative Affairs Department and we should avoid it. I repent. You are amazing and your team has just been fantastic. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Have a great evening and we'll see you guys tomorrow.
We'll see you for Love and Light. All right. Council, we are running so far ahead of schedule and I love you all for it. So we're going to invite Cindy Lou Trishman up at this time for everyone's favorite training, Grandma, which repeatedly traumatizes me. My rate of phone calls has gone up significantly since being elected.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't love to be associated with trauma, but I think it's in my nature. It's everywhere. So thank you. If you could go ahead to the slides, Scott. The purpose of this, sorry, I suppose that maybe you don't have the slides. I'll get started. The purpose of the presentation is just to discuss the Government and Records Access Management Act and to confirm the value of records in the city. I want to offer, of course, opportunities for you or your staff to talk with my team and I about any record questions that you may have or about any grandma requests. We see them all and we spend a lot of time evaluating and analyzing and developing consistent procedures for the city to respond to such requests. As you know, Grandma was enacted into law in 1991, and even now we're still proposing changes up at the legislative session this week. There's always a balance between the there's always a balance to satisfy the intention, to provide access to the public of government activity, to establish guidance for necessary restrictions, and to prevent abuse of confidentiality. Outside of the state, it's commonly titled the Freedom of Information Act, otherwise termed FOIA. Go ahead to the next slide. next slide helps us identify how best to respond to grandma. So to run efficiently as a government agency, records are assigned a life cycle. That life cycle is combined with a retention schedule. Retention schedule evaluates the functional need of the record or the statistical data, and it also evaluates the value. Our record retention schedules are published on the City Recorder intranet website. We also follow the state's DRS, so any questions we have, we refer back to the archives up at the state. Once a record has met a retention schedule, they're reviewed and certifiably disposed of, both electronically and through paper records. I just want to speak to a little point here that I don't think that paper records, their value is decreased. I think we've started to stuff our digital closet because we can open more room, and the desk space was more readily visible to know that you needed to get rid of something. And as we continue to increase our network space or our software space and opportunities, it requires more attention to the management of the records. So I'm collaboratively working with IMS to make sure that we're getting out in front of software applications to confirm retention of data and records created in that. So I just wanted to let you guys know that that's part of our process with the schedules. Next slide, please. The definition of a record, I just added it here. It includes anything that we receive, prepare, own, or retain. So it doesn't matter the medium, it is the component that you have received something or you have created something. There are records that are not records. That sounded really backwards. There is material that are not defined as records under the Government Records Access Law based on the requirement to respond to the request. However, we still need to evaluate that record for value and its duration of life cycle in order to keep our closet clean. Thank you for your patience. Go ahead to the next slide. Grandma is a quick turnaround. Just to be specific here, I'll let you guys know we have 10 days to respond to the request. It is always in our best attempt to make sure that we provide the records in 10 days. That doesn't always happen. It's not legally mandated that we provide them within 10 days. It is mandated that we respond and affirm that we're doing what we can. We have 5 business days to respond to expedited requests. Media requests fall within that 5 business days because they're intended to be for the benefit of the public. And fee waivers are evaluated. Every time a fee waiver is requested, we review it with the department with the records. Go ahead to the next slide. Denials and appeals, they happen often. This is where classification comes into place when it is assigned to a record. Denials are issued because records may be private, controlled, or confidential. There are 30 days after an appeal or after a denial or a partial denial for someone to appeal the records request and either request redacted material, protected material, or just outright that we didn't provide the record. We have 10 business days to respond, and then it can be taken to the State Records Committee and then to district court. Go ahead to the next slide. Our statistics this year, I want to say this is a positive thing. We received 15,620 grandma requests. That is a 5% decrease from the previous year, which we believe and hope is our effort to be more transparent as a government and make sure that we're providing updated records, statistics that people are interested in, and kudos to all of the publication that is out there. We just want to make sure that we know what's out there. I do want to mention that the police reports is our highest record request area, and I believe that will continue. I don't see that decreasing. Police reports are of specific interest to individuals. And then that's the end of my slides, but I did want to mention in our memo, we did disclose that we had 30 appeals this year, which is a new high for us. The appeals went to Rachel Otto. to determine, and then we did have 5 items go to the State Records Committee. 3 were mediated prior to scheduling. 3 were either mediated or withdrawn, and 2 were heard by the SRC, but it was upheld that the city had the correct classification and record decision. Other questions?
Council, any questions? All right.
Madam Chair, sorry to take time, but I just want to take a moment because I, as staff person, I have visibility into how much time and effort Cindy Lou and her team put in sorting grandma requests, making sure they go to the right people, being thoughtful about searching through all our records and making sure we're providing what is truly a record to the public. And so I just wanted to express gratitude for the hard work that she and her team put in. So
thank you.
Hundreds and hundreds of hours.
Yes, well said. Thank you. Thank you, Cindy Lou. Council, I hope you don't mind. I've made an executive decision. I am not feeling 100%. I would really like to continue to move things at a healthy pace. So I've decided to combine dinner with our budget for briefing and to bump up the last closed session and work that we're going to do. So thank you, Mary Beth and team, for being so responsive when we are a little bit flaky on schedule. If you want to come up with Ben Ludke and we can start our budget amendment 4, we probably will take a brief hiatus at some point to go grab dinner once Tucky's let us know. Okay, so we, or maybe we'll go in shifts of 1 and 2 at a time to do that, but yeah, it's already been a long week and it's Tuesday, so. All right, council, would you like to do, can we do like 8 minutes? You guys did it last week. You proved to me that this can be done. Can we do 8 minutes? All right, let's go. I'm very impressed with our ability to grab food quickly. All right, I'm going to turn the time over now to Ben Lutke to orient us to budget amendment number 4.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The public hearing for BA4 is scheduled next Tuesday, February 20th. There are 21 proposed items with over $9.2 million in proposed expenditures. Of that amount, $3.8 million would come from general fund balance. There is also a request for 3 new full-time employees, or FTEs, in the fleet fund. There is an updated table tracking new ongoing costs that the general fund would need to pay for in the next annual budget. This is attachment 1. It's at the end of the staff report. The highlights of the updated table are in this budget amendment. The new ongoing costs to the general fund would be $2.2 million if all the items were approved in this amendment. If you add up those new ongoing costs for budget amendments 1, 2, 3, and 4, it's over $7.5 million that would need to be covered in the next annual budget. Note, of that $7.5 million, $3 million is from the State Homeless Shelter Cities Mitigation Grant. So as long as the legislature continues to approve that funding, it won't hit the general fund. But since we can't guarantee that year to year, we do include it in this tracking. Fund balance update. It is estimated, assuming all the items are approved in this amendment, it's estimated at 31.7%. which is $83 million above the 13% minimum target. That is a healthy fund balance. But on the other side is, in the next annual budget, there's expected to be a large structural deficit. The council talked about this during your retreat. So it wouldn't be surprising if a significant amount of that $83 million, perhaps half, would be needed to fill the structural deficit gap in the next annual budget. Also, an important context is sales tax revenue. The last update we got, it's about $3 million below budget. So underperforming from where we would hope it would be. But I think we're still waiting to get the December numbers, which are usually a pretty big month for sales tax revenue.
So the November numbers came in better, about 500,000. December numbers will be at the end of February. So we should have December numbers by the end of February.
There are 4 straw polls requested. I'll touch on those as we get to those items. And they're listed on the first page if you wanted to take a peek. The first item, A1, this is a request for $230,000 for an air quality incentives program expansion for electric bikes and indoor air purification. There's an overview of the proposed expansion in the administration's transmittal on pages 23 to 29. This is in a budget amendment because it's a follow-up item from the annual budget. If this sounds familiar, it's because the council did put $230,000 into a holding account as part of the annual budget. The funding is split into 2 parts. There's $200,000 for e-bike vouchers, estimated to go to about 350 residents. The other part is $30,000 for indoor air purification, estimated to benefit about 60 households. The e-bike portion would partner with local bike shops to actually supply the bikes, safety accessories, education, and then the ongoing maintenance support. The $30,000 for indoor air purification would partner with the city's existing handyman and home repair program in the Housing Stability Division. The council also approved in the last annual budget a program coordinator FTE. They are administering the existing air quality incentives program where gas-powered lawnmowers can be exchanged for an electric version. Can we get the table up on the screen at the bottom of page 4 in the staff report? This table, it has the proposed voucher amounts based on the applicant's income and the type of bike. The income qualification depends on how many members are in the household. If the council supported this item, an RFP, a request for proposal, would be the next step on the e-bike portion. Also in the annual budget, in addition to putting this funding into a holding account, the council also attached a condition to the appropriation in the budget adoption ordinance. And that's shown at the top of the next page. We can scroll down. The council also included a legislative intent. Both of these are shown on the screen, related to a desire to provide greater role clarity for departments, and sustainability was identified as the top priority. The council discussion at the time was focused about wanting to avoid duplication of services between other levels of government and existing service providers in the community, as well as recognizing the competing needs of core city services. Sometimes this was talked about as a spectrum. On one end, you have the city directly providing services to residents. On the other end, you have the city acting as a convener and funder of local service providers. And then there's hybrid approaches in between those. Some policy questions are if the council would like to continue discussing role clarity and how expanding the air quality incentives program could follow that policy direction.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Councilmember.
I certainly have still a lot of questions about sustainability and what they're supposed to be doing. You know, I still struggle with, obviously, you know, I support the general concept, but I still struggle with adding more programs to a department that I still struggle understanding. And I feel like we're putting the cart before the horse. I was excited to hear when we were talking about last year, when we discussed in the middle of a drought, how Salt Lake City was doing our part to release a lot of our water back to the Salt Lake, how the residents were doing their part to save water, and how the administration was looking into increase the rates to curb some of the misuse of water. And in that conversation with the administration, I personally ask if we can look into rebates to ask for to use better sprinkler controllers, which, you know, it lines up very well with our mission since we, you know, own the water for a big chunk of this valley. And, you know, I was disappointed to hear that that was sort of not brought forward or not even mentioned. But then all of a sudden the e-bikes conversation came up. I really struggle with the concept. Certainly, I love the idea of making e-bikes accessible for all, but we have other crises in front of us. So I definitely struggle with this whole program at the moment. Not that I don't support the idea, but I think in the hierarchy of needs, I struggle with this as a budget amendment, at least.
Anyone else? I mean, I still haven't seen progress on any of the other structural things we talked about, like when we give vouchers to people who might need income, there might also be a likelihood that we need to give accessible charging stations that won't drive up electricity costs, or places to secure them if the square footage in their home doesn't allow them to store it, or weatherized options for storage. And so I still, you know, I'm concerned around those. I haven't gotten many answers on the structural issues. Chris, Councilmember Ward.
Thank you. So my recollection about this was that we wanted to make sure that the people that were getting e-bikes were going to be people that couldn't already afford an e-bike. And I do remember us raising questions about like, you know, making sure that people have places to store them and things like that. I'm not sure, I don't know how we, like, as a city government, I mean, does somebody have to like come to provide pictures of their apartment to show like whether or not they can store the e-bike? I think that might be a little bit more than what we should be doing. Although I appreciate that we don't want to give something away and just to have it get stolen. I get that. So my recollection is that our main focus about releasing this money, and this is money that's already been allocated but has just been put on hold, is that was pending the administration coming up with a program to ensure that the e-bikes are going to someone that wouldn't already afford or be able to afford an e-bike. So has that portion of it been figured out? It looks to me like it has. But what do you think, Ben?
So we left the $230,000 in non-departmental, so it hasn't been transferred to the sustainability budget.
What I mean is we're not coming up with the money. The money's already been set aside for this.
Yep, it's in a holding account.
Yeah, okay, that's what I meant. But has the requirement been satisfied, and were there other requirements that we attached to the e-bike specifically that have not been fulfilled?
So the condition that was placed on the money, that's up to the council to decide if it's been satisfied, and that would be part of the vote, is saying, yes, we are satisfied with these terms. So if the proposal isn't addressing those income qualifications or other policy goals, that could be part of your guidance on approving and releasing the condition.
Okay.
Maybe we could ask the administration to address that question.
Yeah.
I think I have a further question related to the role clarity that connects with this. I think, since I still have questions about this department as a whole, is the role of this department to create a new program or to partner up with non-profit organizations that are doing similar work out there? Why are we creating a program ourselves? Maybe the priority that this administration and this council agrees that we like this. Can we, put the money out there instead of creating the program ourselves? I struggle with some of these questions, and I hope that we can address all of it when we're talking about role clarity within the department and what their goal is as a whole. But just throwing it out there.
And I agree. I have a lot of the same questions for sustainability, and I'm eager to get an answer to those questions. What I guess the heart of what I'm raising is, in my mind, we already as a council said, all right, we'll agree to the e-bike program. You can have the money for the e-bikes as long as you come back to us and say, this is how we're going to ensure that they go to people that are income restricted. And I feel like if at this point we're going to say, well, we want to add these other conditions that weren't part of the message that we gave to the administration at the time that we made this decision, that I don't know how we can expect those issues to have been addressed now, because that's wasn't part of our conditions. I mean, I can think of conditions that I would now like to add to e-bikes as well, but I don't think that it's fair necessarily to do that. And meanwhile, we have money that's sitting there that's available that could go towards the I would say relatively smallish lane of authority that we have within our direct control regarding air quality. So I don't want to move the goalposts at this point. That's a sports reference.
Yeah. Proud of you.
That's where the ball goes.
Yeah.
For you laymen's. Anyway. Yeah, so that's I'm ready to move ahead with the understanding that I want to ask those questions too, and I want to have that discussion. I just don't think that we need to put that entire discussion on the back of...
But it's within our authority, right?
Of course.
To claim by the money. I'm not saying that I'm willing to do that, but it is within our authority to say, we are thinking about other questions. Can we add some? And I don't think it is a moving. I don't want to, change the rules of the game in the middle of it. I think that maybe the goal is to make sure that this works out well for the residents and for the city. I think that's how, this is not a gotcha moment. I'm not trying to do that and trying to make sure that if we're going to do this, that we do it right, if that's the point.
Councilmember Romano.
Yeah, I have a question. In regard to the thing, I also remember us specifically talking about how to make sure that this funding goes to people that otherwise could not afford an e-bike, not just people that, like, e-bikes are expensive. So I see that the proposal is that if you income qualify, meaning you make under a certain level for your family size, you get a larger stipend. Is it still possible, however, that all of the money could go to people that don't income qualify, just a larger number of vouchers go out? Or is there a certain percentage of the money that is actually only allocated? Like, is it one pot of money, and depending on who you are, you get type A or type B, or is it two separate amounts of money?
So the overview in the administration's write-up says that half of the funds would be limited to people who are income qualified, but that is different than what I'm hearing from some of the council members, that all of the funds should go to people that are income qualified.
I appreciate that at least half of it is limited to that. I would also be supportive of all of it going to income qualified individuals, but at least it's not that none of it is earmarked, so that it all could go to people who otherwise could afford it anyway.
It also means significantly fewer people who are income qualified will get it'll be 60%.
200 e-bikes dead, right?
Yeah. And we'll put on the record, the council is always available for meetings outside of budgetary seasons when we bring up things like this, so that we don't end up in work sessions bringing them up. I especially would love to meet and talk about the structural necessity for maintaining e-bikes for so many emerging Americans and people who would potentially become a part of our bike culture, particularly in my district. So I think, we could have those conversations more robustly. Anyone else have any questions or concerns about this? Council, would you prefer to marinate on these a bit and get them all in a lump sum, or do you want to straw poll them as we go through them one at a time? We can straw poll now, or we can move through.
I think this is one of the ones that the administration has requested a straw poll. Most of the other ones don't have the administration requesting a straw poll. This is item A1.
Are there 4 that we're requesting a straw poll on today?
Correct.
Yes. So do you want to go through all 4 of them and then vote after, or do you want to vote on this one now? Vote on it now. So who's going to propose the straw poll?
I propose a straw poll that we allow the restricted funds to be transferred to sustainability for the program as recommended by the administration.
The straw poll is to release the funds. Any discussion, concerns?
I just say, I know this isn't in support of my motion. I know this isn't that this might not be an ideal scenario. If there's like a specific thing that we want to add, like say we don't want it to be 50-50, we want it to be 75-25 or whatever, or 100%, like I'd be open to that. But I guess I just want to remind my colleagues that a lot of times we have discussions about implementing programs, and the concern is that like we're not moving fast enough, and that we need to like clear some of the log jam, and we need to accomplish some of the things that we've set out to do. And to me, this program is one that I don't really see. I don't understand the desire to hold back on this. I mean, more e-bikes being in use is a good thing, I think. and is beneficial. I think we can all agree on that. I think that the concerns that we have and the questions that we have about role clarity can still be answered while letting, having this e-bike program roll out. And we can always make changes to the program as well.
Can we add, I don't know if this is a thing that is allowed, but the communication, certainly on this, I have probably a long list of examples, but I'm gonna focus on this right now. Hasn't been answered to us, and I think been asking for it. So what, my point is, I guess one of the points I wanna make is what will encourage, if we keep improving, what would encourage the department and the administration to actually sit down and help us understand what the goal of this is, and how all of this plays out. If we keep approving money to be spent when we still not understanding, or maybe all of us have questions. I understand that we have done that first step and put the money in a holding account, and I totally get your point, and in general, I'm supportive of that. When we did it, let's move on. Can we add something to this motion to the respect of, that these conversations must happen soon rather than later? I don't know, we cannot force the administration to do that, but to me, it's more than, we're not just, I think this is important to us. We care about this a lot, and we all have thoughts, and we'd like to understand the goal. So I'm okay moving forward with this, but I will be limited. This is the department that talk about rebudgeting, right? I'm going to bring it up again. This is the department that was rebudgeting last year, assuming that we just approve things, just costs, as if we were rubber stamps, right? And we're not. So I want to make sure that there is something there to say, let's sit down with us, let's talk about this, let's answer our questions, and we can actually learn a lot from what they want to do. But I hope that I just say my piece. I'm okay to move with that motion as is, but I have concerns about putting money on the department that I still struggle understanding.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. So my question would be to staff. If we release this funding for this program as part of the 2023-2024 budget, does that bind us in revisiting or making changes to the program in future budgets? So we could say, hey, we did it that one year, we decided this isn't the proper role, we're not going to fund that program anymore. Isn't that a decision that we could make during the 2024 budget cycle?
You could absolutely change the program, either the funding amounts or the uses in future fiscal years. It might be helpful, since the administration would go out to an RFP, to say that this is 1 year, there may be changes, so maybe don't sign a contract that's more than for that 1 year, for this one-time funding.
And I think that's especially important for you to emphasize, because I think it's just as much about messaging from staff as it is about contracts and documents, because I think departments have a momentum, right, when they start programs, and it's harder for the council to undo something that has been in place than it is for you to set it up with the expectations from the outset. But I totally get what you're saying.
Right.
Councilmember Mano.
Oh, sorry. I've just sort of been listening to this debate and conversation, and I think, to me, what it boils down to is I feel with the sustainability department that it would be great if we could have a little bit more of an open dialogue about what the policy direction should be for the department and what the goals should be for the department, in the sense that there's sort of, it seems like it's these one-off kind of already baked projects that come to us. For instance, the food equity program. It may be the best use of the time of the department, but I don't know that that's the case. And I think there may be some other things that are a little bit more within our core services, like public utilities or waste and recycling and things that are actually municipal services where we could make a bigger difference than some of these things that are slightly outside of municipal services. And so I think what I'm hearing, and I may be just turning what you're saying into what I want to say, which is might be the case, but I think I would be okay moving this one forward just because we already allocated the money. I do think that half the money going is sort of bare minimum, but I'm satisfied by that. Like half of it going to income qualified purchasers and half not. I'm satisfied by that. So I'm okay moving this forward, but I would be hesitant to approve any new programs within the department without being able to have the broader discussion of what is the goal of this department, where do we want their energy to be focused.
So I would accept a friendly amendment to my motion that
You're going to do the friendly amendment.
yeah, I am. And
Friendly to
I
himself.
and spoiler alert, I'm going to accept it. I would amend my motion to say that we approve, or my straw poll, excuse me, to say that we approve these funds for this year only, that we don't want, that it's not our intention to signal to the administration that that this is going to be an ongoing thing, and specifically that we're interested in potentially making changes to the breakdown of how much of the 50-50 breakdown for income qualified versus just not income qualified. So with those two, pretty big, bold lettering additions, I think, which I appreciate. I think those are good additions. I would propose moving forward.
Does everyone understand what the straw poll is, what the conditions in the straw poll?
I'll make a comment after the straw poll because I'm fine. It would be simple.
We can discuss now. You're good.
I'm just going to say that, and thank you I appreciate the friendly amendment to the motion, and I love these incentive programs because we do need to continuously move forward. But I think your concerns are valid, and so we need to get those answered. I mean, we also have the gas power lawnmower stuff and that stuff. That's partnership, and it's a 3 years. That's partnership with the state side of the house. So it's a different program. We've already approved that one. So this is separate from that incentive program. This is just for the bicycles at this point. So
Yes.
I appreciate that, but I do think these incentive programs are important for us as a city to kind of set the tone and the leadership before the state, because every little step matters for our air quality. So
Thank you, Councilmember. Anyone else? All right, so the straw poll has been called. Show your feelings. I'm really ambivalent, but I'll go this way.
Okay, are these pedal assisted? Does that matter?
There's a variety, different types.
Okay, well, I'm gonna say for my own purposes that I have concerns about the non-pedal assisted bikes, and the city's lack of clarity on the city's policy about whether those can be used on our trails. And so for me, a question that I'm going to be asking sustainability for future reference is that I don't love the idea of the city giving out vouchers for bikes that are not pedal assisted, and then us ticketing people who are using non-pedal assisted e-bikes on the trails, and people being like, but I got this bike from the city and you're telling me I can't use it on these trails. That is a concern that I'm foreshadowing.
Could the can't use it on a highway? Like, there's places where you can use things and can't, and maybe offering clarity about that.
It's foreshadowing
council
a
request-
concern that I have.
Could the council request the department provide that information when they provide the voucher? Where
I'm just saying I'm
things
going to
are and
ask
aren't
it.
allowed?
Yeah, that'd be great too. I'm going to ask that question.
I look forward to it.
And
Wait.
yeah.
Okay. Should we move on to A9 since that's the next one that was asked for a straw poll?
All right, can I just get a quick clarification on the straw poll?
Sorry, the straw poll was unanimously
Thank you.
affirmative.
I also had a clarification question. The straw poll discussion focused on the e-bikes, which is 200,000. There's also the 30,000 for the indoor air purification. Is that also being approved as part of the straw poll?
We'll move to support that.
So I want to support it, but Am I, again, not performing at the highest today? Was this part of the budget conversation? I don't remember this as part of our budget. It was? Okay.
Yep.
Sorry. There have been a lot of days and a lot of numbers since then. So, okay. Let's can I call a straw poll? Can I call a straw poll?
I called it.
All right. Councilmember Pui called it. All right. Unanimously affirmative. Thank you.
Okay.
Should we move on to A9 then, since that's the next straw poll requested?
Yes.
Okay, we get to a better place together.
A9 and A10 are similar. These are both expenses from the IMS fund balance for software upgrades. They are both in the budget amendment to try and avoid upcoming increases in the cost from the vendor. So A9, $194,000 from IMS fund balance for mobile phone data extraction software. This is the need to extract data from mobile phones is used during investigations. So this involves the police department, the fire department, and sometimes human resources. The software would use a standardized process that is also used by other law enforcement and judicial partners. So this would provide greater security and privacy protection for the data that is extracted and make it easier to share it between the different agencies working on the investigation and during the criminal justice process.
Council, questions, comments, anything?
No,
Straw poll?
I will move to support this
Okay.
A9.
Show your feelings. All right, again, unanimously in support. A10 next.
A10, this is a little more expensive. It's $203,000, still from the IMS fund balance. It's a Versaterm case services software upgrade. This is used by the police department. There was $49,000 in the annual budget for this same software upgrade. But since then, the vendor has added additional services, and those services would be used by multiple departments. So since it's not just one department, the police department using it, but also 911 dispatch and the fire department, it's proposed to be shifted out of the general fund to the IMS fund because it's across multiple departments. So this item would reduce the $49,000 expense in the general fund side, and the full $203,000 would be paid by IMS. Some of the additional enhancements the vendor is offering are additional ways to make reports. So a phone call, a smartphone app, not just relying on the web browser widget that's currently the only option for these type of reports. The vendor stated they have over a year-long wait list, but the city is already using Versaterm, and because of that existing contract, if it's funded this fiscal year, they're willing to help implement it sooner than putting us at the back of the queue.
All right, council members, Councilmember Romano.
What does this do?
I'm sorry. So this would increase the number of ways someone could make a report. So right now it's go to the website for the police department and you can file your report there.
File a police
This would
report.
expand that, so you could do a smartphone app, so you could do it over a phone call. There are more ways to do it.
But it could also be expanded to other departments, you're saying? So it's not just police reports, it could be like graffiti or...
I don't know if graffiti's included, but it is multiple departments, yeah.
Okay. So increasing access to the way that residents can alert us of problems. Is that fair to... Okay, great.
That's a good...
Then I would straw poll that we
Councilwoman Lopez Chavez?
Yeah, I was trying to understand, is this I mean, there's a difference between enforcement cases and civil cases. I mean, is this just an end-all? Because we use multiple platforms, so I am concerned about this actually, because we've been asking for more reporting.
Yeah, Aaron.
Aaron Bentley's online, and he can address these questions.
Hi, Aaron.
Sure, let me speak to this. So case service is for public safety cases only. And just a little correction to what Ben said, this was actually funded, not this fiscal year, but a couple fiscal years ago, but we needed to move Versaterm to the cloud for the consortium, which is the whole valley. So this will just be for public safety cases. We use Salesforce as our platform for the rest of the city. The other piece this does add is language access, which we currently are faulting. So it will allow for 30 languages for the different languages for verbal communication and up to 60 languages for texting and for the form.
Aaron, will you confirm with me, IMS has created over time lots of different languages as far as codified software languages that our departments use. I used to use them when I was a staffer, and I just want to confirm that all of that will be rendered obsolete. If we're funding a new program, I want to make sure that this is consolidating our data and that we're able to amplify reporting back to us, not that we're not creating these different channels in which we're expecting our residents to then apply their cases and communicate back to us.
Yeah, with this and the launch of the new MySLC later this year, it will be simplifying those pieces down, and the ability to combine those will be part of that. Yes, you're right, council member.
Okay, does that reduce any of our current contracts at all? I mean, I'd like to know we're not just funding these different communication channels again, that we're actually eliminating some of these funding streams?
Yes, the current mobile app, we've paid for that this last year, and it will expire in November of this year, and then we're not renewing that application. And so, yes, it'll be consolidating that.
That makes me feel comfortable.
Thank you. Council members, any additional questions?
No.
All right, who wants to call the question?
I will call the question to support.
All right, we have a straw poll to support this. Unanimously affirmative. Thank you. Ben, can we go for another 9 minutes, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
The other item
I'm
that
being
has
real specific tonight.
The other item that has a straw poll request is A7. This is a $400,000 request from general fund balance to increase the fleet maintenance capacity. And there are two parts. The first part is 3 new FTE mechanics. The second part is a one-time $257,000 for additional outside repair of city vehicles. The fleet fund is currently at 73% of its maintenance budget for the whole fiscal year. So halfway through the fiscal year, but almost 3/4 of the way through the maintenance budget. Fleet is not being able to keep up on preventative maintenance, and preventative maintenance extends the useful life of the vehicle. It's a best practice. It makes sure that the vehicle is operational longer. This is because repairs are being prioritized. Meanwhile, as FTEs are added, they often come with vehicles, so the city's fleet of vehicles is getting bigger, and at the same time, the preventive maintenance is falling behind. So the age of the city's fleet is also getting older, which increases the maintenance cost because we have older vehicles. That's why they're requesting the 3 additional mechanics and this one-time $257,000 for outside repair. It is more cost-effective to do repairs with city mechanics. It costs more to send vehicles to outside vendors for repairs. The fleet building, all of the vehicle repair bays are being used. So because it would be much more expensive to extend more bays, essentially add an addition to the building, they are offering overtime to mechanics to work longer hours and shifts at those bays to try and keep up with the growing demand.
Quick question, Madam Chair.
Councilmember Pui.
I mean, in general, I don't have any concerns about it. Well, I don't have, obviously, I don't want to oppose this, but I have questions about how did this happen beyond, I mean, how is it that we're so off on the budgeting, right? This is a good question. I want to know, are there specific vehicles or specific department, or are there the older vehicles that are causing this bigger problem? And is this expected to be the new level of funding that we're going to be needing? So a higher level of funding. So that's something that to have in consideration when we're budgeting this year for the next one. So it's expected that we're going to need an extra $400,000 every year on fleet. And I mean, I'm not against that. I just want to know so that we don't have another budget amendment in the middle of the year.
The council did increase the budget for the outside vendor vehicle maintenance by 10% in fiscal year 23 in recognition of inflation's impact. That likely was less than the impact of inflation, so that's part of why they're falling behind. The difficulties in the automotive industry where they'll place orders and sometimes the order is canceled, or sometimes the window to order the new vehicle might be a week, and you can't always get the order placed in time. And even replacement parts, they're having a harder time getting a hold of those. And so all of these have a marginal impact, but when you take them all together with the impact of inflation, I think that's what's led to the current situation.
I feel like, is there a best practice for budgeting or something that would say when you add X number of vehicles to a fleet, the best practice is to add X number of mechanics or people capable of maintenance and X number of resources? Like, you can't just, you need the oil, not just someone to change the oil, right? Is there some kind of algorithm that we do use, or should we and then we should update that algorithm, or?
I want Jorge to come up and answer that. I believe there is, from my past experiences.
And I see Jorge Chamorro coming up to satisfy all my curiosity as well.
Maybe Julie. There we go. This is Jorge Chamorro with Public Services, and next to me is Julie Crookston, Deputy Director of Public Services over Fleet. I'm going to make an attempt to answer that question because, yes, there is a good correlation between what we call billable hours and maintenance hours. So we calculate the number of assets that we have, number of vehicles and equipment, what is the maintenance expected during a year, and we compare that to the number of staff and the billable hours, right? We currently have full-time staff working as mechanics, but only a portion of it is effectively going to maintenance of the vehicle. Admin time, vacation time, time off, all of that. So in recent weeks, we calculated that to just confirm what we have experienced over the last year, which is a delay on the turnaround time for service. And we just realized that it's exactly at number 3 FTEs what we will need to keep up with the current demand. Over the last 4 years, it's not that just suddenly we got an influx of vehicles. We have experienced multiple things. For once, supply chain, we thought that the reason why we were getting delays on the service was because the parts were not arriving on time. We were unable to get parts. Secondly, vehicles were not arriving on time. Every time there is a request for a new vehicle, I think Ben is doing a good job at informing you that the vehicle is not going to arrive until 12, 18 months. So the delays on delivery, which means we keep a vehicle that is ready to be retired for longer, needing more maintenance. And lastly, we finally were able to hire all the mechanics that we need. So we're in a good position to now assess what is our capacity and what is that we need. And certainly we are appreciative of these opportunities to open the budget and allow us to show you what the need is that we have realized at this point. So many of our partners, which are all internal, will agree that over the last 2 years, the time that they have to wait to get their vehicle back is grown. And so we're just responding to that need. And it's not an emergency. This FTE is not an emergency, but we are hoping to urgently address this downward spiral on the service.
So while you said it's not an emergency, sorry, I'm going to take a follow.
Yeah.
While you say it's not an emergency, should we delay and do this during regular budget process, like you were saying? Is the supposition that you would get further behind such that it would become detrimental to basic city function? Would it be at that level by the time the new budget's approved?
Yeah, as Ben put it on the staff report, the risk that we're running is having vehicles that are critical for municipal functions, and I'm talking about waste and recycling vehicles, streets vehicles, that could fall into that long delay and impacting the operations. So if we were to wait until, let's say, July to get this approved, traditionally, and we consider this, traditionally, council has approved 10 months of funding for new FTEs. That pushes back even further, and we will be talking about 6 to 8 more months before we can get mechanics in the shop. So we're asking for Estrapol to move quickly, to be able to advertise those positions and get the mechanics on the shop as soon as possible.
Council, any other questions, comments?
I thought
Councilor
Ben
Romano.
said that the shop was full. Are we going to hire nighttime mechanics?
So, yeah, I wanted to clarify that. We are utilizing all the bays, but about a year ago, we restructured some of the shifts in the staff, so some are working 410s. With these 3 mechanics, we would be able to work them into that 410s, so the current fleet building has capacity to take these 3 mechanics. One of them would additionally be a mobile mechanic, which would go out to where the vehicle breaks down and be able to address the issue, which would save that city department time from having to bring their vehicle into our shop. So we have the space in the building, in addition to that mobile mechanic, to take these 3 FTEs on.
Madam Chair.
Councilmember Puy?
Quick question. I generally don't have issues with this, but I want to believe that many of the vehicles, not all of them, I'm sure, like any other department, are from the police department. But you know, every department has vehicles, and I'm sure they all break, and they all, you know. I wonder if there's one department that's a little rougher than others on the vehicles. And but no, this brings to the question that I've been hearing from officers, and also in one of my jobs before, which is the conversation between leasing and buying. And you know, I know that this conversation happened in Salt Lake City before. Officers will tell you that smaller agencies in the valley have newer vehicles, nicer vehicles. They're on the top of the line, and Salt Lake City is buying their used vehicles when they retire them. So you know, I think this is the chicken of the egg, right? Like, do we repair these vehicles and invest in, you know, increasing this, or we maybe look into leasing police vehicles? So I would look to support this conversation right now, but I think I would like to open that conversation for the near future about the leasing of the police vehicles, like other agencies, like UPD does, and other agencies in the valley. And I used to work for the UPD, right? And so I believe that there might be better ways of doing this. So I would like to support this assist right now, but with the caveat that this is a conversation. Do we need to keep expanding this, or maybe we start leasing some of the vehicles for the police department?
Councilmember Dugan?
I was just saying, part of the idea that the need for it now, because if we do have to continue repairing, then we go to the outside sources to repair them. That's just more expensive than the inside. So that's why I'm in favor of this also, because we do need to stop this now instead of having this spiral go further, and then it becomes more expensive, and then the backlog becomes higher and higher. But I agree, you can always look at the lease versus purchase, and I think they've done that before, but I think you should always revisit that on occasions. So
I would like to signal out that it feels like we are in whatever the new normal is. God help us that this is it. And supply chain issues are becoming more predictable. Staffing issues are becoming more predictable, even if they're more difficult than our previous reality. I really want to see more accurate projecting and budgeting this year. I get that we are halfway through the year at 75%, and that is not sustainable. That will impact city function. But whatever we have to do to update our predictive abilities, and if we need to help with a consultant or funding for that, I would rather do that ounce of prevention rather than these pounds of remedy later on, because we're not accurately projecting our realities. But you don't have to convince me about the aging fleet every time we get driven up to the Capitol. I'm riding in it. I see it. You are not exaggerating on it. So All right, does anyone want to call the question for this straw poll, or is there more discussion?
Move to support A7.
Yeah.
All right, show your feelings. All right, that is unanimously affirmative. Mary Beth and Greg in particular, thank you for coming up here early and rearranging schedules. Ben, thank you. We'll pick this back up
Madam
next week. Okay, thank you.
Didn't A13 needed some approval, if I remember right, or is that not urgent at the moment?
I'm not aware of a straw poll request for the outside legal counsel for the attorney's office.
Wonder if we should do that. So I mean, to signal to the, I don't know if they need that or not, to straw poll the outside legal counsel funding.
I'm sorry, council member, can you repeat the question?
I just want to know if we need to straw poll that to make sure that you know that the money is ready to go and you can go.
Thank you. I prefer to talk with you in a confidential setting first, and then we can talk about it later. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you all so much. All right, council, we are going to now move into a closed session for the deployment of security devices. So if we can have a motion. Oh, and when we come out of closed session, we will stand adjourned.
Madam Chair, I move that we enter closed session for the purpose of discussion of deployment of security devices and personnel and advice of counsel.
Second.
I've got a motion from Councilmember Mono, a second from Councilmember Pui. Any discussion? Councilmember Dugan.
Yes.
Lopez Chavez.
Yes.
Wharton.
Yes.
Mono.
Yes.
Pui.
Yes.
Young.
Yes.
And I'm a yes. That is unanimous. We are in closed session. Hey guys. So